Okay, so I'm gonna have us all do a little exercise before we get started here. I think it's a nice way to kind of warm up. I'd like for you to reflect on just the last 30 days of the sales of your business. You write down wins, challenges, learning moments. Even if you want to go back a little further, that's fine too. I just want to get something fresh in your mind as we kind of start talking about that today and just give you a chance to reflect. Welcome, Sarah. Thanks for coming today.
Hello, happy to be here.
So yeah, I'll give you maybe like 4 minutes to reflect on this as people start coming in more. Welcome, Jamie. We're just doing a little reflection before we get started, just to look at the last 3 days of the sales of your business and just write down any wins, challenges, or learning moments, just to kind of get you ramped up for the workshop today.
Thank you. Hello.
Okay, feel free to wrap that up and we'll start this workshop. So I want you to hold on to that, and I think we can weave what you wrote down into some of the activities and things I'll be talking about during the workshop. So I just wanted you to kind of have that just currently fresh in your mind. Just to get started, I want to tell you and introduce myself. I'm Netta Rosinas. I help introverted business owners use their strengths to create a custom plan for their sales, marketing, and systems. Why I do what I do is probably about 12 years ago, I was a web designer and I wanted a guide like myself, a coach that would help me understand how I can navigate marketing and sales in a way that I didn't feel like I had to wear a mask. Like, I felt like I was always trying to be someone else. I didn't feel like I could be myself. And so I wish I could have, been that person for myself back then. And so the ways I love to work with people, my clients are one-on-one coaching, cohorts, and workshops like this. Um, so that's just a little bit of myself. So I wanted to kind of walk you through a few things today, and feel free to, hit up in the chat or feel free to speak up. I don't mind any interruptions at all. That's kind of how I teach. I teach a lot of classes and places around Portland, at Portland State University, at NUN, NUNM, which is I teach a lot of business classes to acupuncture students and other courses. And so I'm teaching all the time. So, feel free to just jump in. I don't mind. But I wanted to share these 5 steps of honing in on introverted superpowers into sales because I find them really interesting. They're actually this book I just finished reading by Beth Below called The Introvert Entrepreneur actually had listed them, and I thought she did a really great job of kind of breaking them down. So one of them, the first one is reframing your ideas of sales. And so I think for all of us, and I know I'm guilty of it, there's times where I just immediately think of someone like my last bad interaction of sales. Usually, like when I went to go buy furniture or a car, or somebody was trying to call me and sell me something, or someone was knocking on my door. I think a lot of us just immediately think of those scenarios or those interactions, and that's not who you have to be. And Beth does a really good job of like reframing it and saying that, think of yourself as more of an educator or a teacher, and you're wanting to help people learn about how you can solve their problems and get them from A to B, and people need your help. People need your services and what you do. It's just helping them understand that. So that's another way to help you to help reframe and put not think about it what you're doing as sales, especially when you get in front of a potential client, but that you're going to educate them. And I know this is something that, again, like my 12 years ago when I was in web design, I was really struggling with the sales piece of my business and finally got into a position where I could think like I was just helping educate and give solutions, and they can choose to work with me or not. And it just kind of took the pressure off. Another good point is remember why people say no. Sometimes this could be you're just in front of the wrong people, and it's really good to um, keep note of what results from a sales call or some kind of interaction like that. Other things could be that you're sharing the wrong information and it doesn't land with who's in front of you. And then another point too is you're maybe not being very clear. It's just something I've struggled with in the past. Like sometimes I've just thrown everything at people on a sales call and then expect them to make a decision. I have a framework I'll share with you later today that will help you with this. But one of the things I think it's really good to remember is niching down can be really important. And I've done that recently in my business, and it helps me kind of stay on track of who I'm in front of and who I need to talk to. And I think it can help a lot of people because you don't want to serve everyone. And like I've been teaching this marketing class to the acupuncture students, and a lot of times, um, they want to just be like acupuncture can take care of everything. Well, yeah, sure, it's a really great tool, but you want to layer it so that you have a focus on this and um, really help people understand that you can help them with one specific thing, or you want to help people with this in this segment and that type of thing. Um, I thought, yeah. So one thing I was going to say about niching down is one of the first businesses I had was I made these bags, and they were handmade bags. They were made with this canvas material, and they could have been bags for anyone. In fact, I made them, and some of my friends used them as purses and carry bags for activities. But what I wanted to do was create a bag for dog owners to carry all their dog gear. And so, I put a paw print on the bag, made it very clear that it was for, dogs, dog supplies, and I was able to sell them in doggy boutiques and doggy daycares and different events, and that really helped. It helped narrow down my focus, and people knew what the bags were for. There wasn't a guessing game. So the more you can really narrow down and niche, I think can be helpful for your own sanity too. The why, how, and what, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but the questions around that is why you do what you do, uh, who you do it, or wait, sorry, how you do it, and then what it is. And so I'll break this down a little bit later, but I did my own version of it when I introduced myself, and something that you can do when you're, do introductions, networking, even standing in line at the grocery store and people are like, well, what do you do? It gives you a chance. And I think the why is really important, but I'll get into that later. Oops. Okay, don't rush the process. This is something I've struggled with a lot, so that's why I really wanted to talk about it. a lot of times in your industry, you need to kind of have a sense of like how long, like when the first time someone understands and sees your business to the very last, when they're giving you the transaction to buy from you, how many touch points is that, and how does that look over time? And giving going back to the web design example, it took usually it was like a 6 month to a year process to get people to basically buy from me. And, it involved a couple different touch points. And, it wasn't something I could rush. And it was very frustrating. But once I finally accepted that, it made it a lot easier. And a lot of times, too, the follow-up was what was key. I would have a sales conversation with someone, and, a lot of times they were just gathering information. They weren't necessarily ready to buy. And a lot of times, too, is they maybe don't even know, like, they don't understand the value of what you're providing. They don't understand the cost either, especially with websites. I don't know. I'm sure some of you have worked with web designers. Sometimes you're going in blind because you don't know how much they're going to charge you, or you just don't know, and so you're being honest about it. But a lot of times I would try to pre-qualify people with a intake form to even see what their budget is and just gauge it. But I think, certain industries, especially higher price points, the process to convert to sales takes a lot longer. Right now, I've been talking to let's see, some landscape contractor folks to do some work on my backyard. And I can tell when they get to the question about, well, do you have a budget for this? They're, oh, I remember the exact same feelings I had when I was a web designer, just like, ooh, do you understand the cost? And I smile and I'm like, yeah, I've done some research. I've pretty good idea it's going to be in this range. And they're just, I can see the sigh of relief that are like, oh, I'm not wasting my time with you. It's really fascinating, but it's nice to be on the other side of it once in a while too, right? But yeah, I think it's important to understand, what is a normal sales cycle, and to just keep that in mind, and also what the follow-up process is sometimes with folks, because that can really make a big difference, just to stay in front of them and be friendly. And then repeat, practice, and learn. I think this is so important. I have done this myself where I've gotten on with another colleague and have kind of toggled back and forth and pretended that they were a potential client and practiced my sales pitch. But it was more just like practicing talking about my services. And I think that's something that we all can use more practice on, especially if you have like a lull time where you're not getting a lot of those kind of conversations, and all of a sudden one comes up and you're like, oh, I'm not really warmed up to do that. So I would really encourage you to do some role playing with people that you feel comfortable with, just to get that kind of like get that greasy wheel going where you're feeling comfortable about it, and it's not feeling intimidating or intense, and you can just kind of roll off your tongue. I think the more we can practice that, and even if it's just doing it in front of your computer, recording yourself to see what how it feels. I think just making it more normalized can help a lot too, and just being very, very clear on what you're offering, and how you're and also being sure how you can align your services with what their needs are, and that's something we can practice today a little bit too. And I think that's something with the framework. So I'm going to pause here and see if anyone has any questions or um, thoughts before I move on. So that's other things to cover.
No question.
Okay. So the who, what, and why. This is something that I've been practicing, and I think it's really helpful, and I wanted to share this with you today. This is actually something is kind of taken from Simon Sinek, who, wrote the book Start With Why, and the famous TED Talk that's been around for a while. And it's really important to actually address the why, because people want to know, what's going on, what drives you to do what you do. This is something that I ask my own clients in an intake form, is like, what gets you up in the morning? What makes you passionate about your business? And it's kind of an indicator to see if, they still have, if they don't have the passion, it's like, well, why are you taking all this time and energy to do this? And it's always fascinating to hear why they do. why they started their business and what motivated them, and then it's kind of like a nugget of like, oh, here's a really special um, information that we can play with. But I think I just want to break this down so because I find that, as introverts and more introverted people, you can kind of lose track of this and you think you get so inside your head and you realize, oh, you're not really thinking about it in a clear terms. Sometimes you just think about it like how it applies to everything. And I think just having a simple script can be helpful and then you can modify it as you need. So why do you do what you do? Um, I think having a really good, like I shared with you why I do, why I'm a coach because I wanted a version of myself for my younger self. And I'll give you another example that I think is really good. I worked with this acupuncturist a while back, and on her website, she had an actual page that talked about her why, and it was a really good one. It stuck with me for a long time. She suffered from really bad anxiety in college, and she tried a lot of different things. And I think a friend of hers mentioned, "Oh, well, have you tried acupuncture?" And so she's like, no, okay, I guess I'll try it. And she went and did a few sessions, and she could not believe how much better she felt. Like it was pretty phenomenal, and really struck her as kind of pretty much life changing. And so that changed the direct, the positioning of her career. And so she actually ended up going to acupuncture school and became a really great acupuncturist. And, her specialty isn't necessarily anxiety, but she definitely loves using that as a modality a tool to help people who actually I think her focus now is postpartum and infertility. But still, it's nice to know what motivated her, what drove her, because acupuncture school is no joke. It is a big investment. So it was just really nice to see that, and I've encouraged other clients to share their why. And I think it can feel a little bit vulnerable too, but I think it helps people connect with you on a different level. And then how do you do it? This is something that I think you can kind of first off, it might be a lot of information at once and you kind of want to simmer it down because this is something I got really excited about as a web designer. I'd be like, I have this whole process and this framework I take you through and I had one of the business coaches back in the day told me they don't want to know all the details. They want to know the basics, like, what makes you different as far as this, how you do your thing. Because if you grabbed a bunch of web designers and put them in a room, they're all going to have different processes, and that also helps people know who to work with. So I think how you do it is, what's your value proposition? What do you bring to the table? Um, what tools do you use? Uh, maybe some training you had. I know some of you have had some different training that can make this unique and stand out. And then what is it? I think this is the part sometimes I've just lost track on and I'm working on too. Like how do you really, how do people work with you? And like for a web designer, it would be, maybe you start prices start or packages start at like $2,000 per website, and then I build you a custom quote based on what your needs are. For some other folks, it's flat fees. It's like we have these different packages that start at $800 and they go up, and then depending on your needs are. And then you break down like what for me, it's like I do one-on-one coaching, I do group coaching, and I do workshops. So, how do people work with you? And it opens up the possibility of, oh, okay, what is that matching what people are wanting? And is that what they're looking for? Because if you don't invite them in to tell what it is that you do, they'll never know. And then you don't want to leave people guessing. So I think that's really be very clear about that. So basically just listing the products and services you have. It could be, a course, it could be a class, it could be, a number of things, but keeping it short and sweet is the key. So I want you to try and apply these questions and see if you can play with this and come up with your own. And so feel free to drop in the chat or talk about this out loud, but I'll give you just a few minutes to work on it because I think it's something that for me was helpful just to jot down and work through. So let's do that, and then I'll check in with you in about three minutes. All right. Feel free to wrap up and just want to check in and see how did those questions land with you and were they helpful? Catherine says, these are great questions. I can see how my conversations would be quite different, starting with the why. I know this is something that really hit me too as I was reading Beth's book, where I learned that she mentioned these questions. And yeah, I've been practicing it myself, and it definitely lands different. So I think I would encourage you to just play with it. Again, the idea is to kind of have like a little bit of a script, and then you just modify depending who you're talking to. I was curious if anyone else has any kind of thoughts about what, how they're introducing themselves now and how this could be really different if it's or you're already doing something similar too.
I feel like I normally start with like my past, like past experiences, past jobs. Um, and that doesn't necessarily answer any of these questions. So reframing it in this way, I think would keep it keep the spiel a little bit more tight and make more sense for the now.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah. No, it's good, it's always good to kind of reframe and um try new things or try, um and I can just go back in time, I'm sure a lot of you, and go and look at how I introduced myself, especially in different businesses I was in, and sometimes I was really, really lengthy and um it's always frustrating when you start seeing some people's eyes glaze over as you talk. You're like, uh-oh, I'm losing them. So it's definitely it's a lot, but I think short and sweet can be fun in your favor, and if you can kind of fit, practice this and kind of like it's like for me, it was writing it down and then just kind of like, oh, okay, how does this piece together? Um, but the why is such a powerful thing, and it's something that, you just can apply in so many pieces of sales and marketing. I will be going to a conference tomorrow, so I get to practice this a lot. I'll be applying this framework or these questions to what I when I talk to introduce myself, and it'll be great to see people's reactions. So yeah, I encourage you to do the same and see if it makes a big difference. And maybe even has you do have different conversations with people too, because a lot of times you're just wanting to pique someone's interest, especially when you don't, like I love doing this at the grocery store, just with maybe because I'll be sitting at a my daughter has a lot of sports. I'll be sitting next to other parents I don't know at all and be like, "Oh, hey, well, what do you do?" And then, or what's going on? And then I have no context or framework or I don't know these people very well, so I don't want to assume anything. So it's really nice just to kind of give them just a little taster of what I do, and then they can ask more questions, and it actually becomes a really good conversation. All right, so moving on, I wanted to share this sales framework lead. I think is really helpful. I've been practicing it for the last couple of years, and I think it lends itself to some more introvert people, more quieter people, especially it gives you kind of permission to do things a certain way. So L, listen first, ask a question, and pause. And this is something I think I don't know if you can think about when you're on a sales if you're on the opposite end and you're trying to buy something, it's nice when the salesperson or whoever you're, interacting with, does the same to you and gives you a chance to talk through and uh, share the problem they're trying to help you solve, or just trying to like give you space and open up and not dominate the conversation. I think that really makes a big difference. I noticed when I started applying this back when I had my web design business, I had some of my clients were just like floored that I actually listened to them, because I think some other people they had like interviewed or talked to kind of felt like they had an agenda pushed on them a bit and said, okay, this is the solution I have for you, not even wanting to hear their challenges or what they wanted with their website. So I think if you can come across that, and you probably are, a lot of you are doing this, but just to make it really clear, crystal clear to the receiver, it makes a huge difference. And then echo what you hear and reflect is really key because, and that may not even be in the conversation necessarily you're having with them. It could be later in an email. So a lot of times, this is something I do after a sales call or a discovery call. Is I'll take my notes and I'll maybe record a Loom video or do an email and really get very specific about what they were talking about, what their challenges were and their problems, so that they know that I'm not going to just have some cookie cutter solution. That I really get what they're trying to solve and I listen to them. So it's not just in that immediate back and forth. Sometimes there's just not enough time. But I think later it can, especially again, as those folks that need time to process, it can be helpful to do that later on as the follow-up, and that can be really powerful. Be curious if any of you've done some of that before, or what your follow-up is like when you after a conversation. If somebody wants to drop it, something in the chat or speak up, I really, just before I move on to A.
Well, this is Catherine. I'm just realizing as you're talking that I don't really have like a very specific follow-up often. Like sometimes I'll follow up, but a lot of the time I do leave things open-ended.
Hmm.
And I can just see, I'm like, oh yeah, follow up. That's like a thing that could be relatively easy. And I could just have a little ping to myself, even that's like, yeah, to just think about like what is a good follow-up if I've met somebody and they seem somewhat interested.
Yeah, no, that's so great. And again, like you can play with that, and that's what's great about this is you can experiment and see. And I think for so many of us, like we can just start with the email and be really simple. But it's all about the timing too. And even just like the next day or two, you send that email, and then you wait a week and send and just do another check-in. Those are it's really great because a lot of times folks just you don't know where they're at. You don't know how they're trying to decide. If they're if it's managing their time, their money. There's just people are busy. So sometimes it's just staying in front of their mind. Like it's just like when you want to refer someone, you're probably going to refer someone that you last interacted with. That's so common. Like I know, and I just saw myself do this the other day where I was recommending someone. It's because I just spoke with them last week and I saw them in person. So those it's just good to remember that as humans, that's kind of how our modes are. So it's something to think about. Align your offers to their needs. So that goes back to what I was talking about with it's really good to practice talking about your offers and your services and what you do. So you're really, crystal clear on what kind of offers that will match what people tell you, what they're during that conversation, like they have XYZ problems. Okay, so maybe they need this solution. Um, and sometimes it gets really uncomfortable. I've been on these calls where you're like, uh-oh, they're saying something I don't really have a good solution for. So there's a few things you could do here. You can be like, let me get back to you on that, which is probably one of the better answers. And I'm working on this myself. And so you can maybe even this other coach I knew had like these back pocket offers where you have a little bit more experiential or experimental things you can do to kind of try something out with the client and give them a chance to see if it's something that matches their problem. Or you just at this point you're like, well, you could throw in the towel and feel if you don't feel like it's a good alignment, you can just recommend other people. And it was so cool. I was listening to this podcast recently, and there were I think it was a design agency that was on it, and they said they purposely are always talking to other designers so that they can recommend each other because they know. they know for sure that they're not a good fit for everyone. And they acknowledge that right off the bat. So I was like, wow, that's bold. I really don't hear people say that very often. So I think it's good to know when you align, and it's also good to be honest and be like, well, I'm not a great fit, but here's some other people. And, I've done that a lot. This is something I did a lot in web design because, I couldn't build every single website people came at me with. Like, especially, I did not specialize in e-commerce or, shopping websites. And in fact, that was one of the questions I got one time. Somebody was really wanting to create like a e-commerce type of website. And I was just like, I'm so sorry I don't make those, but here I have this wonderful person I know that is highly qualified and recommended. They can help you. A year later, this person comes back to me and says, yeah, that was the best recommendation. I so appreciate you sharing this person. You made my week year or something. And I was just like, wow, that was great. She remembered that I referred someone. So that's something to remember that, you don't have to have you don't have to have all the things that match up with everyone. But if you can find other solutions, you can still be a superhero and kind of come across in a really good light and make quite an impression. So that can be really helpful because that person then said, "Hey, I've told everybody about you that I know because you made such a good impression," even though I didn't work with her. So it's interesting how that how people are and the humans interact. And then D, direct the next step. Don't leave it open-ended. I think that's one of the harder ones. But again, having some kind of follow-up, like we talked about before, can be really helpful. And again, I think it's good to have some kind of script ready, so you don't have to write it all from scratch, but you can then customize it, maybe having like a couple paragraphs, and the first paragraph is going back to echoing what you heard and reflecting what they said. And then the other part can be, more like, this is a service I think you would benefit from, and here's the next steps. And that can include, um, you know, a link to payment, a link to signing a contract, whatever the next steps are. And luckily we have a really wonderful software that makes this a lot easier because back in the day, this was something that, oh, it was tedious and it took me so many different software tools to do one thing, and now you can almost just have one or two and it's wonderful. So yeah, don't let that be the bottleneck. I think you can make it really easy. You can get into Stripe even and just create like a little sales link, and people can pay you really quickly. So I think you just don't want to create any barriers for yourself. And I've been guilty of that. I think there was a time probably about 12 years ago. I remember I was on a sales call with a cleaning some kind of cleaning business here in town, and at the end she's like, "Well, are you gonna send me something? Are you gonna send me how to work with you?" And I was just kind of like, I think my jaw dropped. I'm like, "What? Why would I? Yeah, of course." And she, because I hadn't said that, I was kind of wrapping up the call, and she was just like, "Well, what is the next step?" And I'm just like, oh yeah. I was so oblivious. So I was really glad she like kind of took the initiative and kind of nudged me, and I was just like, yeah, I got to start doing that. So I was definitely dropping the ball back then. It's easy to do. All right. So I just wanted to see if, kind of circling back to the first thing we did here at the workshop is kind of reflecting on the sales that you've had over the last 30 days or more, like what's been happening, and just give you a chance to have some coaching if you want to talk through anything, or even just apply some of the things we talked about, just as far as the different superpowers, the framework. I gave a lot to you, so now I just want to see if there's anything you want to parse out or work through at all. Oh yeah, Jamie said send brochures with examples. Yeah, that can be a really good follow-up for sure. Or even case studies. I think having some kind of like, this is the problem, this is the solution, this is the end result can help people see, oh, I have that same similar problem and you can help me with that. Okay, great. All right. So Jamie said for the follow-up, if you if you want to schedule a next step meeting, what's the best way to word that? Do you find it better to offer them dates or ask them to send potential dates and times? Yeah, I feel so salesy when I do this. That's a really good question. I think, um, yeah, I've seen some people kind of push me into that in a way that wasn't so great, but I think um, some of the other coaching I've gotten on this is if you can just get a date on the books while you're on the conversation, if possible, while you're like either on the phone or on Zoom or in person. Um, and I think you can kind of read the person if they're willing to do this. That means that they're interested. If they're kind of pushing back, maybe there's some resistance, and you can kind of see you can even ask a question like, is this feel comfortable or is this, how are you feeling about this? And I think that can be really good, because I've seen people, I've had people push me really hard. I'm just like, wait a second, this is not what I want. So, but I think the next best thing, could be just having some kind of like scheduling tool that sometimes that can be easier for some people too. And maybe you're on the phone or in Zoom with someone and they're like, well, I don't know, and you could be like, that's okay, I'll just follow up with a scheduling link and email. And I've gotten a lot of success that way too because sometimes people, their lives are just really packed in and tight and they just need they can't do something on the spot. They need some time to process when to meet and schedule their lives out. So and there's some people that argue that and I'm curious if you have what your thoughts are about like scheduling tools that can feel very cold or not personal. But I think in some ways it can just make things easier, and you're not doing that back and forth, back and forth. I did this experiment last summer where I didn't use my Calendly link to connect with people. I just did it manually, and oh, it was painful. And I don't know. I think people were frustrated. They're like, "Why aren't you sending me your Calendly link?" I was just trying to do some experimentation, and I learned that that was what people preferred. So I think I think feeling it out is part of it, but willing to have like a two-stepper process can be good too. Great question.
Sorry, you said they did prefer the link.
Yeah, yeah. I think in the end, most of them did because, again, a lot of my clients are more introverts, so they just needed more time to process when to schedule it, and it just made it so much easier.
Thank you.
But it's good to experiment and just try things. That's all we can do. That's how we learn, and it can be very uncomfortable, but it gives us a lot of good data. Okay, well, if there isn't any other questions or um, anything like that, I'll just wrap things up because I know time is precious, and I really appreciate all your attention and time today. I think attention is one of the most fragile, wonderful things we have to offer for people, because there's a lot of things wanting our attention. So I really appreciate that. All right, so if you want to take this a step further, see, you can see how my wholesale, see, I'm being doing sales here, but you can see how I'm doing it. Looking for a trusted thought partner who will quickly understand your business's sales strategy and help you make future decisions. I have this special sales strategy one-on-one Zoom session. Normally these are around 225, but you're getting it for 150, and it's good through Friday, May 25th. So I'd love to work with you if you want to do some more deep dive into what we talked about today, or if there's some other things you want to work through and role playing, and I'm here for you. I've done that with other clients and love to be a support. All right, well, it was wonderful. Oh, here I see. Okay. Um, oh, Jamie, actually, yeah, the sales team could join. That would be great. I would love to work with them. So yeah, we can talk a little bit more about that. The session's an hour. So yeah, that could be really good. And I'll send this to you up via email, and I'll have a survey, like a questionnaire to see how you like the workshop and what I can improve upon and all that, and other future ideas. So I'll send that out to you. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and thanks so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. And I'll probably be doing another one of these again, in early June, I'll let you know what the theme is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye bye.